Why do 90% of players load up every day and struggle to win games on NBA 2K? As we uncover the reason, you'll learn some of the genius techniques that all top players use. Not only that, we're going to dive into some of the strategies that have been gate-kept for years, which will help you even the playing field against comp and feel like you're playing my career versus randoms and casuals. Let me know if this sounds familiar. You're playing a game, you make a call, and there's one person on your team that has no idea what's going on. The 1%, players like BearDaBeast, CB13, Tutak, Joe Knows, all use this first tip. But it's often overlooked by 90% of the NBA 2K player base. And that is reading the floor. Reading the floor is one of the most important skills in NBA 2K. Being able to understand who's on the floor, what look the opposing team is giving you, where the mismatch is, where the rotation or help is coming from, and so much more are key to becoming better players, because they can all impact what you should be doing during that specific play and where you should be positioned on the floor. What's happening on the court is always changing, so you have to be able to read and react quickly to best help your team during that possession. For example, what can you take away from this picture here? You have the shooting guard and lock up top, you have the power forward on the back end, you have the point guard in the left corner, and then the center in the right corner. That should automatically tell you that any rotation or drop is going to come from the right side. This also tells you that if you're trying to run away from any sort of rotation, you need to be able to get your point guard or ball handler over to the left side of the floor. Alright, how about this one? The center is slipping. The back end recognizes that the center can play two in that corner. So what he does in this situation is he fakes like he's going to help. But instead of actually going to help, he instead positions himself to play the lane, and he waits patiently and times the pass perfectly to get the easy interceptor steal. Being able to recognize everything going on the floor, it's going to be difficult at first. But over time, as you understand what's going on and you get more reps in, it will become second nature. But if you noticed, I left one thing out in that last example. Anybody know what it is? If not, this second tip is for you. Tip number 2, help the helper. Unless you're playing quick match or a 1v1, 2K is a team game. A lot of players often have the mindset that they're responsible for only their matchup, and as long as their man or zone doesn't score, they did their job.
Stop it. Get some help.
That is completely wrong and a bad mindset to develop early on. If a player next to you gets beat on a play, you want to be able to swing and help them, while they or another teammate rotate to help you. Look at this example. The on-ball defender gets beat, and the big immediately drops to take their man, and the on-ball defender quickly sprints to the open man. Now the guard has nowhere to go and has to figure out another way to score. Team defense is how you win games in NBA 2K, but how do you know when to help and when not to help? That actually brings up our next tip. Tip number 3, communication. Communication is key and is a true skill gap in NBA 2K. All players should be on the mic at all times during a game. Telling your teammates what to do or what you're doing can be the difference between beating better teams and struggling against rec randoms.
Y'all can run rotation.
No foul here.
Ready.
DJ late. 5.
Steal.
Party chat, Discord, and if necessary, game chat are all easy platforms that you can use to communicate with your teammates. Be sure not to over communicate though, because flooding the comms can be just as bad as not talking at all. Try and designate a captain for each side of the ball and allow them to be the main voice. Usually it's the point guard on offense and the lock on defense, but it's really personal preference at the end of the day. Everyone else can still give their input on a play, but should try and keep what they're saying short and sweet in order not to flood the comms. Good communication makes any team better no matter the skill level.
Early. Someone, he baited.
On. Right.
But it becomes a game changer if you're able to relay what you learned in this next tip to your teammates. Tip number 4, retain information. As the game goes on, your opponents as well as your own team will show tendencies that could be used against one another. You want to be able to pick up on patterns quickly and combine tips 1 through 3 to take advantage for an easy bucket or a crucial stop. You don't always have to use the information right away though. You can hold on to it and use it later in the game when your team might need it. Or you can run it right away and bait the opposing team into falling for the counteraction later in the game. It's all about mind games. If you notice that the center in the corner always likes to drop to the paint every play, you could pass to his corner right as they're dropping for an easy 3. This not only forces the center to hesitate on if he's going to drop or not, but it'll also open up more space on the floor for your offense to operate. 2K is a game of adjustments, so every single time you adjust, the other team's going to adjust. It's just going to be a back and forth thing. So you want to make sure you're able to retain as much information as possible and be able to relay that to your teammates whenever you need. We all know 2K can be an extremely frustrating game at times. I've seen teams fall apart when up by 20 points or more because they're not following this next tip. Tip number 5, keep your composure. Look, we've all seen or witnessed somebody raging because of a game of 2K. And while it's entertaining to watch, it's not really helpful when you're trying to win. It's okay to show a little emotion, such as excitement or frustration, but be sure to quickly lock back in so it doesn't impact your play or your teammates. I've witnessed players fall apart mentally when having a bad game, and their teams usually wind up losing as a result. If you catch yourself getting frustrated or even nervous, try and take a deep breath in order to relax yourself. If you see your teammates getting rattled, try and pick them up without babying them. Whatever you do, do not start fighting in the middle of a game and blaming each other. If you're too busy arguing about the last play, you're not focused on the current one. If the problem can't be solved quickly, clip the play or plays in order to be talked about after the game's over or when you actually have time to really talk about it. We'll get into that a little bit later in the video. Just like you're retaining information and making adjustments, so are your opponents. But what are some strategies that you can use to be able to get the upper hand on defense? Learning how to use different formations and rotations on defense can really confuse your opponents. Half-court defense in 2K is broken up into 3 categories: man, zone, and matchup zones. Knowing when, how, and why to run each one and their variations, such as 2-3 or 3-2, and what defensive rotations you can call out of each one can really elevate your defense. Make sure to communicate with your teams early in the play and correctly, because for all you rec heads, there's a difference between a 2-3 zone and a 2-3 matchup zone. Don't throw my A regular 2-3 zone, everybody's responsible for their assigned areas. Left wing, right wing, left corner, right corner, and then you have your big man usually guarding the paint. In a 2-3 matchup zone, a defender, usually your lock, is responsible for guarding a specific matchup no matter where they are on the floor. So if you have your lock following the point guard across the floor or switching them onto your shooting guard, that's a matchup zone. So please, for the sake of my rec record, and everybody else out there, please just know the difference. Once you understand each formation, you can cause even more havoc to opposing offenses by running rotations. Popular rotations such as high-low, stack, triangle, and more are great ways to throw different looks at the opposing offense and keep the PG guessing all game long. Take time to learn your positioning on the court for each one and what rotations work best in each situation, because not all rotations work the same. I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, between these and the passing lanes this year, it seems like defense is a little OP. Are there any ways to help the offense? Yes there are. But you're gonna have to combine everything else that I've shared with you in this video up to this point with what we're about to talk about next. Just like defense, offense can be broken up into schemes in NBA 2K. While there's some in 3v3 as well, we're going to talk about that in another time. The 2 main schemes ran in 5v5 are spread pick and roll and 5 out. Depending on which one your team is running will impact the spacing you have on the floor. If your center's an inside, you can't run 5 out because defenses know they aren't a threat to shoot. Once you figured out your style of play, now you can start reading the floor and seeing where the defense's weaknesses are. If a player's sitting high off the corner, you can call a backdoor cut to take advantage of the gap in the defense. Or if you recognize a rotation might be coming, you can have your center slip on purpose in order to dot the rotation mid-stride. Due to most defenders having a high steal rating this year and the way the lanes are currently, you have to be very careful with your passes. If not, those things are being ripped right out of the air. Once you start getting more comfortable, you can start to run plays to move the defense and create openings to score. The more you force defenses to communicate with one another, the more likely they are to make mistakes. Plays such as Fifi and Bucks can be easy ways to confuse the defense and get your teammates open to score. With the smaller player models in NBA 2K25, it gives you the option to be creative and run all different types of sets and plays in order to confuse your opponents. And our last tip, which is arguably the most important one if you want to become a better 2K player, and that's watch film. Watching film's the best way to get better at the game without actually being on the sticks. No matter the sport or esport, all the greats watch film. They watch film on themselves, they watch film on other people at their position, so they can make sure they know all of the top techniques and they're not getting left behind. Clip your full games or have you or someone else stream them. Afterwards, watch it back by yourself or with your team to see where you might have messed up and what you can improve on. Also, watching film is a great way to hold yourself and the entire team accountable, especially that one person who's always trying to say they did nothing wrong.
This is 4K! How did they get you in 4K?
Don't just watch film on yourself, watch film on top players as well. Some of the best players in the world stream every day on Twitch and YouTube. No one is too good to learn from others. If you have too much pride to not want to learn from somebody better than you, then you're only holding yourself back. These are just some of the top plays and secrets that the best players in the world use. But if you're looking for a few more things to help your offense, click this link here.